Welcome to the Personal Process Podcast. My name is Parham. I am the host of the show. Today, we are joined by my friend Joseph. Joseph is a graduate student at Simon Fraser University, and he's actually been a guest on our show before. We talked about health, the challenges with COVID, and how we can come on top after this pandemic, not as just a country, but as a nation entirely. So if you haven't checked that episode out, definitely give it a look. With regards to this episode, we're going to be talking specifically on education in the future, the challenges the pandemic has given us, and also what we can do about it, and maybe give a little bit of perspective for individuals who've already been in their careers for a number of years compared to the individuals like myself and Joseph who are new recruits of the workforce. And with that said, we'll hit our intro and we'll get into the discussion.
Podcasting worldwide from Vancouver, Canada. Welcome back to the Personal Process Podcast, the show that takes you through the growth, hardship, self-discovery, lessons, and stories of individuals who achieved success in their own personal path. Trust the process.
Bam. So that was our intro, and we just got Joseph's attention. And good timing, because Joseph, here comes the first question. When we were chatting earlier, I was mentioning, you know what, Joe? We wanted to come on the show a bit more regularly with you, chat about life, chat about our experiences, our thoughts. And I asked you, Joseph, what's a topic that you want to talk about today? And you mentioned education in the pandemic and what the future holds. So why is that important? Why should we be having this talk? Why should people be watching us or listening to us on their favorite platforms?
Mm-hmm. Again, thank you for the invitation, Paham. I really appreciate. I've actually listened to the last episode you uploaded, I think yesterday or 2 days.
With Nima?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it was really good. I enjoyed podcasts. I mean, it's a new music. It's a new music.
It really is. And, Nima's podcast is one of the fastest growing episodes yet with our platform. And with regards to YouTube, I think it's already hit the #1 platform with regards to the actual podcast. It's almost there, and it's the most recent release. So if you haven't checked out Nima's episode, definitely do yourself a favor. Click the links down below and check that out. But yeah, Joseph, it's definitely true that it's kind of like the new music. It's something that everyone's doing. And to be quite honest, when I first started podcasting, I didn't even actually listen to podcasts. I just like talking, and some people say I have a decent voice. So I'm like, okay, well, let me give this a try. Yeah, but tell me, Joseph, what is this education in the future? Why do you want to talk about it? Why is it important?
Right. I did answer that question at first. Well, I think for a long time, I think I've been passionate about education. I have been passionate. I don't think, but I've been passionate about education because education allows us to examine ourselves, and not education in the context a lot of people think about it, but education in the context of evaluation and re-examination. But I'll talk about education. I wanted to talk about education in the way a lot of people think about it. Schooling. And maybe to an extent, socialization of the mind of the people into a working culture of society. But
before you go on, Joseph, what do you mean by socialization? Just do you mind explaining a little bit?
Right. Well, there are a lot of different pathways humans or individuals we take to enter into society, to fit into the patterns of a society. Part of those systems or ways or pathways are culture, religion, the different constructs through which we kind of understand or begin to understand the world. But education for a long time, or schooling for that purpose, has been that pathway for a lot of people. For you and I, schooling has been that socialization process through which we begin to understand the world, we begin to contextualize or find our place as well in society. So that's what I mean by socialization. Yeah.
Okay. And education played a pivotal role in socialization. And right now it's playing an even more pivotal role in the world, especially for individuals who are at the post academic. Well, is it called post academic? Yeah. What's it called? I forgot the
Uh,
name for it.
Higher learning institutions.
Higher learning. There was something post something, post it's something high school.
Mm,
Anyways, university, college, all that kind of stuff.
right.
Even high school, actually, high school graduates as well. So tell me, why is this important? And it's socialization, but critically in this point, why is it important for you? Why should we talk about it?
Right. Well, education has been one of those most heat systems uh, uh, pre and post. I mean, post COVID or during COVID. A lot of countries had to hold off their education systems or hold off from learning. Where I come from in Uganda, I think kids did not go back to school until recently. It almost took 8 months until schools could be reopened, right?
Wow.
So almost a whole year from March, I think, last year to this year, that's when schools kind of started reopening. So you can think about that. I mean, education does allow for parents to work, right? Education, I mean, against schooling, allows parents to work because kids are also preoccupied
Hmm.
with their learning. And then when you talk about post-secondary education or even tertiary or higher learning institutions, there were also heat. You and I used to go to SFU, or I still go to SFU, but a lot of learning was transferred to online platforms. Uh,
Hmm.
and you can imagine what now the new future is going to look like. And I doubt I think a lot of people feel comfortable now with online schooling or
You doubt.
uh, I doubt a lot of people would want to go back because
Mm.
there are costs related to the in-person education. For
Hmm.
international students who have to be here,
Sure.
their costs of living, moving here, and so. But then on the other side, education and especially the higher learning institutions does allow for conversations. One person told me that what you really get in a higher learning institution like a university is not so much about the education or the content you get from there or the diploma, but about the network, the social network you come up with. So that is kind of also changing a lot in higher learning institutions. A lot of people don't feel as connected as they were to their peers. So that network is missing out.
It,
Um,
it's very true. You know, Joseph, yesterday or not yesterday, a couple days back, we had an interview with Jeff Wald, and he actually wrote a book called the. Essentially, the book was with with regards to the end of jobs, and it's not literally the end of jobs. It's meaning it's kind of like a new industrial revolution. And Jeff Wald was talking about how school. Oh, we're having chat. I think I was mentioning this actually, but that it's not so much the things that you learn in school, like for example, health science, I don't know, 300 or whatever. It's not that, but it's the people that you sit in, the conversations you have. It's these conversations we're having right now about certain aspects of life, and it's challenging beliefs, like
mhm,
especially when you're in a university setting. I mean, you're mentioning international students. You know, if you're from Uganda and I grew up in Canada and we meet each other and talk, the way that we see the world is not the same.
mhm,
And it's not to say that mine is better or yours is better. It's different. And I think those nuances and those nuanced conversations we can have with one another can kind of help us find ourselves.
mhm,
And we're talking about why people would not want to come back. But to be honest, Joseph, I thought that was like, for me at least, like the conversations I've had with you. I mean, let me give you a little backstory for me and Joseph, because
you really want to go there.
man, so we met at this event. I won't go into details of that one, but what ended up happening and why me and Joseph are such good friends, I swear to God, every single day every single day I would see Joseph in a new place. Like it would be like the weirdest places, and then we look at each other. All we would do is just laugh for like
Right,
3 minutes. Everyone around us, whether if I'm in a group or Joseph's in a group, would be just like, "What's going on?" But it's just
yeah.
like the weird. I was joking with him after. I'm like, man, where are you gonna show up after we graduate, man? Are you just gonna show up in my house one day randomly walking around?
And then COVID happened, and
Exactly, man. It all just went. Phew. But like, like these chats that we had when we met each other, it'd always be fun. It'd always be like entertaining. But we actually had some deep heart-to-heart talks about various topics and like from the whole spectrum. Like, and when you're missing on that, like, because they say the quote is, college is the best years of your life, quote unquote, from what's it called? Let's say LA's movie scene, but it's also the best years to develop yourself, to know who you are. I mean, I don't know if I can speak for you, Joseph, but like, man, comparing to myself to who I was when I was 18, like I cringe at myself at 18. The thoughts that I had, the way that I believed society should be run, the way that just the whole circuitry up here. But through these conversations that I've had with amazing friends like yourself, professors, classmates, X, Y, and Z, clubs, association, volunteering, and finding out who I am, I kind of have a little bit more sense of who I am.
Mhm.
And I think, I don't know, like I was looking on Reddit and there's people mentioning that, like, oh yeah, I'm pretty content with online learning, but I'm just like, I couldn't do it.
Mm, mm, mm.
So what about you? Like, what are you thinking about this? What's your thoughts?
Well, there are a couple of things. One, maybe let's talk about the impact first before we look at how
Sure.
things have changed. Or
I got
how
too
things
excited,
have
man.
changed.
The topic was good. The topic was good.
But when you look at the impact, of course, the lack of social network for young people, it comes in. It comes with all kinds of effects. For Auntie Eng right now, teaching assistant for undergraduate first year courses, and I can tell the impact on these young guys coming in. Maybe some of them might be third or second year, but I feel sorry for the young people coming in first year students. You can imagine now they're now going to second year, but their entire first year experience has been online. So I feel for them, and I can see it in the struggle with writing and submission of assignments, right?
In what way? Tell me, like, what do you notice in specific? Because you've been TAing not only this year or even last year. So, like, what's the differences that you've noticed?
Right. Well, when you have in-person learning, a lot of people are able to kind of check in on each other. If you've forgotten about an assignment, your friend or your professor will remind you, "Oh, this assignment is due."
Good point.
Not even just the reminder, but the moral support to get through an assignment. To say, I'm not the only one going to be submitting at 11:59. Another person is
Shout out to first year.
Together. All right. So if we look back retrospectively to our first year experience, there was support. We had support from each other, right? But imagine a young person now locked into their room, mostly their bedroom or house. And yes, there exists. I mean, you can be on a WhatsApp group or iMessage group.
Not the same.
But it's not the same.
Not the same, man.
So that impact is definitely going to be felt. And as I said in our last conversation, I don't know what it's going to take us. I would say 10 years or so to see the impact of what this pandemic really did, or the effects of the pandemic.
Are you talking specifically on the educational sector and how they're going to train people, or
not just the education, but overall? But for the purpose of this conversation, of course, the impact it's already been felt.
Oh, yeah. Oh, bud.
Yeah. Think about
any business
at school, right? It's not just when we're going to school. There's there are jobs for the kitchen staff. There's
Oh yeah.
jobs for the cleaners and we shouldn't be calling them cleaners, but what the proper word is janitors, right?
Right.
There are jobs for all kinds of people who can thrive from a higher learning institution or a school. But so the impact is not just on students, but today we can focus on students because this is a personal development program. So when you think about education, as I said, it's not so much about the content of what you're learning, but about the network, the challenge of beliefs, as you mentioned.
Absolutely.
And so the impact is going to be quite, especially if it goes on for so long. Now we're into the second year of the pandemic. So I can imagine a lot of people are starting to realign how they're thinking, maybe their positions or positionality within their social circles. Maybe they've lost friends, they're unable to keep up with their network. So there's that challenge or that impact. But then there's going to be an impact on moving forward from higher learning institutions, because a lot of at least my friends, finished school just around the time the pandemic was starting.
For sure.
A lot of them are still at home, no
For
jobs, no. So you can only imagine.
Absolutely. And before we kind of go on to the segment, we've had a couple of episodes talking from, how to develop your career plan with Mark. Then, we're talking with Nima on his beliefs with, that the educational system just doesn't meet the current demands that the job market has. We talked with Jeff Wald about how the future of jobs are changing, and it's already hard enough as it is, because in my opinion, Joseph, and I think we both concurred on this, like the schooling that we get is great. Don't get me wrong. I love the stuff that I learned. Some of the things I was not too fond of, but I think a lot of students can concur in that statement. But, the material, some of it was excellent. I really enjoyed learning. I really enjoyed, because my field was in kinesiology, the human body. I mean, that's pretty cool. Your health science, same kind of deal, right? It's health. It directly impacts you. But, like, I got to tell you, man, like, if you don't go into certain jobs, the majority of that knowledge is so useless. There's like one or two courses that I use on a day-to-day basis, and that's kind of it. And it's kind of sad to say. I mean, did you get the Bachelor of Science in Health Science?
No, I did. I got the Bachelor of Arts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Smart man. So I did the Bachelor of Science for kinesiology, and we had to do 2 calculus courses. Now, don't get me wrong. I love math. I don't know why. I always just liked it. Probably because it's undisputable. And, I usually had problems with my professors and teachers where there's grade conflicts, but, the proof is in the pudding. I put in the work and I got the answer. So just check mark. Thank you very much. But, these courses, like, I never use them in my degree. The only thing that I learned that I needed from Calculus 1, which is essentially just the first year calculus, deriving the majority of things, is a derivative is essentially a slope. What did I learn from Calculus 2? The integral is the area under the curve. That's 8 months of my life. And, it's just like, it just doesn't fit. I mean, I'm not sure. Your field may have more uses for calculus in this. And I'm not saying the calculus is dumb. Okay. Calculus is really cool, but it's so niche. And when you teach it to so many individuals, what's the point? You know what I mean? So, we're talking about all this. And the reason that I mentioned this preamble is because when you're finished university, when you're finished high school, you're just entering the job market, you're already at the bottom of the food chain, okay? You don't have that huge of a network. Maybe you did some good networking, and maybe you found a friend like me and Joseph where you just bump into them every single time on school, a random place, and just laugh and have these chats. But, like most people, it's not their concern. They want to finish school, get in, get out. Now, combine that with the fact that there's a lot of elements that school doesn't teach you about the business sector, whether it's, job politics, whether it's how to write a good report in a good way, how to communicate properly, how to X, Y, and Z. There's various factors. School does a good job on a lot of fronts, but there is definitely things that are missing for the 21st century, at least in my personal opinion. But Joseph, I want you to kind of lead us in the direction of how COVID impacted this for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, just a few points maybe before I move on to, you touched on calculus and a lot of education or courses that we take that may not be have a practical
use for our life.
Practical use, right?
Mm.
And that's where socialization comes in.
Tell me.
There's a hidden curriculum.
What is a hidden curriculum, Joseph? Dun, dun,
dun. A hidden curriculum or the unsaid curriculum is, think of it as the things that you're learning whilst you're learning other things.
Right. So right. I think an example is kind of when we're like kids and we're lining up and, like line up in your orders, like learning how to communicate maybe with your peers. This one I'm kind of freestyling. I kind of forgot the exact definition of it, but you learn how to like communicate. You learn how to put yourself into order. You learn how to take commands from positions, people of higher authority. These are things that I'm just rambling from my head. But yeah, is that right? Or
yeah. So for calculus, maybe not having a practical benefit.
Sure.
But maybe the implied benefit is that you're learning problem solving and all that. But the challenge to that kind of, and I'm not saying that I'm for that.
Right. I know.
The challenge with that kind of organizational or modeling of an institute or education is that there is no transparency.
I was just going to mention that.
There's not transparency. And once there's no transparency, then there is a lack of praxis.
Lack of praxis. Hold up. You got to explain praxis. This may be a common word, but it just sounds too special. You got to explain it to me, man.
I should. Look
at this guy's vocabulary. You're a graduate student or something, buddy?
No. Praxis is action and reflection. Right.
So when there's no transparency, there's no praxis.
There's no praxis. Because if I don't understand why I'm doing something or why there's a certain way of doing things, I'm just going to follow blindly. And that's and that leads me, of course, to our next conversation about why the pandemic did have a number on us. And
a couple of numbers.
It's linked to this point that when you are doing things in a pattern or a culture without reflection and you're just going, there comes a time where the thing, until something happens, maybe like the pandemic, that brings into question all these things that you've been doing for a long time.
Absolutely.
So certainly the way we've been educating young people has been called into question by the pandemic. It might have been a culture of schooling, but was it the right thing? Was it effective? Was it sustainable? Right. So that has been
uppercutted to the face.
Uppercut. It's called into question, and we have to evaluate how are we going to educate young people in the future in this new world order that we're going to be functioning in, because a lot of things are going to change for sure.
Oh yeah.
But we now need to, and that's why we have to implore and undercut this kind of cultured schooling, or cultured work culture, or economic culture.
So the culture that is the norm in various aspects of life. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Because once you're doing things out of culture, there is no reflection. And And when you go on to do so much like that, you're running on autopilot.
You're not thinking. You're not reflecting.
until something happens, and then you have to stop and reflect on what you're doing. So,
Absolutely.
of course, it's benefited us for a while, into, the Renaissance, and then now into the 21st century. But for sure, like, we cannot live life. Life requires that we are living, but these cultures require that we are dead.
What do you mean?
Life,
What?
life requires that at any point in time, you cannot come to a conclusion of anything. When we come to a conclusion, it means it implies death, right? It implies
Yep.
learning stops.
I think I kind of follow you. Yeah.
But with doing things in a cultural pattern, it then leads to kind of a conclusion about a certain thing, that I've mastered that.
Right.
We've mastered that. Let's just go with that.
But it's kind of like that shadow of repetition, right? It's kind of like that auto loop rather than going straight in one direction into the unknown.
Exactly.
Which is a little scary. And just before I let you finish here, Joseph, I just wanted to add in a little small tangent, but at a more micro scale. The same thing happens with individuals, and that's why I was mentioning in the beginning of this podcast that the schooling was absolutely phenomenal and excellent for the socialization that we got to do as students, because your beliefs get crushed left, right, and center, man. If you actually have an open mind and you go and put yourself out there, like I've put myself out for election for the Student Society, for the SFU Senate, for the Board of Governors. And, those are high stress environments, and you kind of have to put all your beliefs on your skin and just put it all out there, give it your best shot. And ultimately, whether you win or lose, you gain such valuable insights into life, into yourself, into the world. And there are tough times in life that break you, that shatter this paradigm, the auto loop that you're in to be happy. And then you're kind of left out in the abyss, in the unknown. And you're saying, what do I do? And that's a critical point, right? Because the society there can either say like, oh, let me just bring on a ton of debt and we'll cover it up. We'll cover it up. We'll cover it up. What happens then? Zimbabwe's inflation. Boom. And Zimbabwe is just an example, like, because what is it? Like a $1 trillion note is like practically worthless now. And
it's changed now.
Is that right? Okay. I haven't kept up with the news clearly. Is it? So the inflation bubble's done then, eh?
Yeah, I think it's better.
I think is it because it's went to the USD?
Yeah.
Okay, that's why. Yeah. Makes sense. But, like same sort of thing with people. It's not the stacking on depth, but it may be harmful behaviors to cope with this rather than saying, okay, I'm in this abyss. What can I do? Which direction can I go? And I think there's a very negative connotation to this, because a lot of people don't like pain. A lot of people don't like failure. You want to be like super good. You want to be good looking. You want to be smart. You want to be right. You want to be, what's it called? All these positive traits. And it's like, we're throwing in failure in the back of the bus. It's like, if you fail, you're a loser. You're the worst. Man, it's just another building block. Take that failure. That's another block. It's an F, right? So it's literally kind of like, let me see if I can. Okay, this is getting harder than I thought, but it's literally like you can just stack the F's on each other, right? And as lame and funny as that kind of sounds, I hope it was kind of funny, but it's your progress. And same with the culture. It's a necessary part, I would argue, and I think it's a critical part that we talked about for our last podcast together, Joseph. It's a very important what we do now, because it could literally ruin us as a society, as a nation, internationally, globally, or it could make us better. And I think whether it's at the micro scale for each individual person or whether it's at the macro scale internationally, today's a tough time that we got to make some tough choices, but it's important to realize that this is an opportunity for us rather than all the negative problems that ensue. Because if we keep thinking on the negatives, we can't go forward, right?
Yeah, I think, again, I'll touch on that point, that as humans, it's very easy to kind of desire to fall into, to reach a conclusion about something, about a relationship, about someone, about a system, about a way of doing things. because maybe it's more effective. But when we do that, we cut out ourselves from the natural flow of life. Today, birds go along with the seasons, right? Trees grow or bear fruits in a season, right? But as humans, we have surpassed the natural rhythm, and it is costing us. It is costing us, and of course we're now on a tangent. But I just wanted to drop it in there because it is connected to the impact of COVID-19 on education.
Absolutely.
And how we're moving forward. Because when we come out of rhythms, the natural rhythms of learning, we kind of suspend any form of evaluation or reflection, which is important for life, right?
Yeah.
Of course, we have memory that kind of keeps. Birds also keep memory that they know I fly in this direction.
Sure.
These seasons come and this is how I behave. But that doesn't mean that they stop learning, that they suspend any form of, because they have to be alert, right?
Absolutely.
But as our systems, unfortunately, our education system in particular, because we're talking about that today, I wonder if it has been responsive. It's not even just
asking the big questions.
I wonder if it's been responsive to what is happening, and how are we going to teach? My young cousin sent me a message yesterday. He asked me, Joe, should I go to an international school or a local school? I'm like, for a 13-year-old, that's a good question, because he's already reflecting. And he told me, I want you to tell me the truth and the bare truth. He's not following what the parents are telling him, but he's now reflecting on what is going. And I told him, well, it doesn't matter whether you go to an international school or local school. What matters is what you want out of your education, right?
Key point. And just before I let you go on, what do you want? That's a critical point for any aspect of your life. Whether it's how to spend your money. A lot of people buy things that they don't want. A lot of people go after jobs that they don't want. A lot of people go after ambitions they don't want. If you don't want something, don't do it. Time is a commodity just as much as is money. And I'd argue more, because money you can always make more. Time, it's gone.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, I would lead back to
He was mentioning that what do you want?
The impact, of what do we want. So for a lot of young people, it's that they've got into a pattern of, I finish high school, or let's say I finish my middle school, I go to high school, then I go to grad school, college, then I go to high school, I go on to grad school, but there's no purpose, there's no reflection. And going back to the theme of your podcast, personal development, the pandemic has now put us into boxes to reflect on what do we want? Are we going to keep doing things the way we were doing them? Or are we going to change and reflect on what systems we had and where have they gotten us? What were the limitations? What were the successes? And how do we improve?
Right.
And so for a lot of young people, if I may go on a little bit, for a lot of young people now, they are challenged with they are challenged to kind of now start reflecting about exactly what are you up to in life. We talk about potential. We talk about things that we want to do as young people, finishing college and all that. But I feel like if we look positively to what happened during the pandemic, and I'm not saying that to in any way undermine experiences of what people have gone through, or losing loved ones and all that. But on the brighter side, if we look at this, it can also help us reflect on, especially young people, moving into the either higher learning institutions or moving into the work culture, unfortunately, work culture. What do we want? What kind of world are we going to frame after this? And the sad part is that a lot of young people have not, unfortunately, been equipped, and we are handled. There's this kind of potential that is framed in a picture for a lot of millennials and young people, that this is what you have to do. This is who you're supposed to do, to be. This is what you're supposed to do by this time, by this age, by that. But a lot of things have changed. A lot has changed. That 30 years ago, or maybe generations ago, what you would do at 30 is completely different from what a 30-year-old is doing now.
Absolutely. And I think the best way to say it, Joseph, is, I think we were talking about this with Nima, we need a software update, man. Windows XP was good, but man, that Windows Vista, I mean, it had its problems too, but I think it looked cool, right? Point being is, society evolves, so does software, so do individuals, and everything is interconnected now with the internet, and it's like, I remember when I was in school, I was learning cursive writing. I mean, sure, it's kind of fun to write on a paper now and then, but I mean, like, it's just outdated. I didn't learn about internet privacy. I didn't learn about cybersecurity. I didn't learn about how data is going to be collected. And to be fair, when I was a kid, when you were a kid, like, this wasn't very pertinent stuff. But, like, as we're going into high school, like, it's becoming more and more important. I think when I was in grade 8, like, everyone had Facebook at the time, and it's like, there wasn't one course that taught me, hey, your data is being collected from Facebook or other social media platforms. And it's like, I'm not going to discuss in this episode why I think I wouldn't be in favor of that, but at least to educate the young individuals what they're exposing themselves to. Because what I mentioned earlier, when we're kids, we aren't ourselves. We're just going in that loop. Go to school, come back home. Go to school, come back home, play some video games, go to school. And it's like, you're not thinking about this stuff. There isn't too much opportunity for reflection. Perhaps maybe the pandemic, for this recent generation of individuals who are in school, college, high school, all that good stuff, had an opportunity to reflect, but the individuals didn't, the society didn't. And it's like, we need that software update. We need to update our school systems to meet modern demands, modern necessities of life. And yeah.
Well, if you think about what has befallen a lot of young people, I mean,
what's up?
I wonder, because we are into a time almost like we as young people, we are almost going to be charged with the new Renaissance.
What do you mean by that?
We're going to be charged with
we're going in deep.
we're charged now with remapping, reconfiguring how we want maybe the next 40, 50 years to look like. And of course, they are masters of the world, who have kind of designed economic systems and all that. And kudos to them, but that was 50 years ago. That was 60 years ago. Of course, much respect to them. But life as we know it, it is always transitioning. That's why we sleep.
Absolutely.
We sleep so that we can reset. The body can have a kind of some time to deal with what happened during the day, what you ate during the day. We need sleep. But if the world is going so fast and we're not able to stop it and reflect about, I normally use the analogy, or it's actually a friend who uses the analogy of that we are on a bus heading for a cliff. we are parting on a bus headed for a cliff.
Yep.
So I think for what I meant by the young people today are charged with remapping is that there are a lot of transitions that have to happen.
And they got to go to the driver's seat too, right?
Yeah. And a lot of that would, of course, have to do with reimagining those expectations and the potential. That the world we lived in maybe 50 years or maybe what our parents lived in years ago might not be the same. And we cannot continue with the same expectations and the same kind of picture of potential. So we have to re-examine that.
Absolutely. And since you mentioned the same expectations, like there's kind of a joke from individuals who are, I think I don't know if the appropriate term is baby boomers. Is that appropriate?
Baby what?
Baby boomers. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, I mean, might be.
I hope so. No offense. I don't know how generation, what's before X? I don't know. But these individuals, like you mentioned, Joseph, like the rules were different. You go to university, get out, man, people are knocking at your door. Hey, Bob, how you doing? Let me give you a job. Do you want to see my resume? No. Do you want to interview me? Nope. Okay, you're coming in on Monday. And it's just like, now you finish with a degree, and I think now you need to get a master's just to be the same as like the people with a bachelor's before, right? And then on top of that, you need like 5 years experience. And it's just like, these individuals, not all these individuals, some group, I won't specify the magnitude, but, there's a notion that some of these individuals say that, millennials are lazy or, Generation Z is lazy. And it's like, it's just like, I mean, how many individuals back then had to work and go to school? How many individuals back then went out of the job market and worked for a year and then bought a house? This isn't something that we can even dream of nowadays for a lot of individuals. It's like rents, what is it, 30 to 50% of an average individual's like income. And it's just like, this isn't something that fits. It doesn't fit anymore. And, like we're talking with Nima, and the same formula just doesn't work, and it worked before. And I think that's why a lot of parents have a lot of conviction into it. But by forcing an individual down a route that doesn't fit them, it's really doing a disservice, right? You want to chime in on something?
Yeah, I think there's, of course, the generation differences
sure.
that are causing all these pressures. The young people are like, you don't understand us, and then maybe the older generation is like, you're very lazy.
Some.
But I think I want to keep I want to keep it to that systems, because when we think of systems, then we all try to look at it from the same eyes. We separate you and me and your experience, and we look at, okay, independent of who I am, independent of who you are,
right?
Let's look at what we've been dealt with.
Sure.
What kind of world has been given to you? What kind of world, let's say, a lot of millennials, your age, my age, what kind of world are we stepping into?
That's an interesting perspective, yeah. Because it's kind of just like giving someone a field, right? And saying, hey, I had this field when I grew up, and I grew, I don't know, let's say 100 bananas or whatever, banana trees. But then you're going and you're only growing 20. What's wrong? But the interesting thing is, yes, the field is the same. It all looks the same. But wow, this is such a good analogy. But the nutrients in that soil is not the same. It's all the nitrogen and all the other chemicals in that would make the soil fertile and make our banana trees lush and fruitful and amazing and allow them to grow has been drained. And this is kind of what we're facing right now. Like, yes, it is the same field. Yes, there does look like there is opportunities in X, Y, and Z, but it's just like, the underlying factors that can get us there are just not the same. And maybe before that was just more companies or less individuals without degrees. But I mean, I don't know the statistic off the top of my head. Maybe you do, Joseph, but I think 50% or 30 to 50% of individuals now have an undergraduate degree. I mean, do you have it off the top of your head or?
No, but I definitely know that. Of course, there's now a lot more literacy. The world literacy or the global literacy rate is higher than it used to be.
For sure.
And it's a lot of countries have achieved that Millennium Development Goal of sending every child to have an education. But again, we have to question yes, there's an advantage to literacy, but knowing to read is different right now. It's almost like every child is born to read.
Sure.
It comes second to nature. So it's not, we have to change our goals. Reading for what purposes?
Absolutely.
Being literate for what purposes? So
exactly.
And what I'm trying to enforce here is
enforce, big word.
Reflection and evaluation at every level, whether individuals, leaders, or leaders of organizations, of education institutions. We really have to reflect, because there is a lot that is going to, I don't want to be the bad prophet, but
the cliff's coming up. The cliff's coming up.
You can see the trajectory, and we almost have to even change our education systems to be responsive to the climate change or what is happening to our
world,
natural environment.
Yep.
Are we educating young people in ways that are keeping these things in mind, that the natural world is not the same. Our natural environment is changing because of what we've done, but this is what we can do. And so that's where a remapping comes in. And you and I and a lot of my friends who are probably starting companies or social impact
ventures
or people going to the business sector, we really have to map and make a decision that, look, we are going to make an effort to rebuild systems that are responsive to what is happening. Because otherwise, you saw what happened 2020. You see what is happening, where we have to shut down for 3 weeks because we don't know what to do, because our systems are not built to respond to such natural reflexes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of work ahead of us, and I think there's a lot that we can do. I just really wonder if it can be done, because it's a big feat, right? Because we're not talking about, for example, let's say Joseph, I don't know, got his dream job or his dream interview, and I don't know, what's the dream job for you, Joseph? Let's say Bonnie Henry's job. I don't know. That's a pretty good job, right?
Let's go with that. So
let's say he got an interview for that. He thought he killed it. Everyone at the firm said he did well. And then 1 week later, no. And, Joseph's feeling pretty defeated. He's worked his whole way up here. He went to graduate school. He wrote his thesis. Parham called him Master Joseph. That's our joke from the previous episode. If you haven't watched that, check it out. But, he finished his degree after that. And, it's tough. And then Joseph has the ability to reflect, make do with the decision, and go forward. But as a society, it's a lot of pressure, because there's division in thoughts. I think just looking at the masking policy, we can see that. I don't think I want to go into whether what's right or what's wrong here. The main issue that I want to convey here is that there's a division between the country, and right now there's a lot of turmoil. And that's just one issue. There's various other issues that, let's just stick to Canada, Canadians have differences in. And how are we going to adjust the systems level to accommodate all these differences, where it seems nowadays with, I guess, I keep talking about the social media algorithm, man, but like, like when you're getting just one view presented to you and you are robbed of your right to see a full picture, I really think it really harms society as at large, man. And it's like, it's just like, how do we go about that? Do you think society can actually mend its wounds? That was a pretty cool question. I like that.
You're really digging into something very, very critical here, and I feel like we should even have a whole segment on this one.
Man, go ahead. We got time.
This is a big one. This is a big one because this is how I think about it. I feel like we are functioning. We have bodies or societies functioning at a secondary level that has not yet mastered the primary and proximal needs.
Bam. I like that.
We have come up with all these algorithms and our systems are so fast, so quick, but we have not mastered the things
basics
that have withstood the test of time, like conflict and difference in thinking, tribal wars or racism, or so we have all these things, personal, interpersonal things at the primary level.
Yeah,
we don't have to, for the most part of the world, does not have to worry about food, does not have to worry about shelter, because of all these systems that we have developed or technological advancement.
Sure.
But I hope that the technological advancement will give us a kind of will allow us the time to sit and reflect about interpersonal issues, because we don't have to worry about getting from point A to point B. We don't have to worry about whether I've eaten or whether there's food. When these things, maybe, that's my hope, that maybe when these things are catered for because of technology, and we can produce food or produce at more effective or a large scale, we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to worry about getting a job or not. Then maybe we can have time to talk and resolve these things that are still affecting our societies.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, that we've advanced so much ahead of our time that we're in between these two worlds that have kind of transitioned to, it's almost like a child who starts eating before they develop their teeth. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we need to first develop the teeth, because these things that we're producing, the algorithms and all these things that we're producing, they might have a big impact if we have not developed the right mechanisms of dealing with these things.
Absolutely. And I think there's two little points I want to make on that. Everyone's probably played the game of Jenga. You've played Jenga before, right?
Yeah.
So like, if you have a strong base where everything's lined up and all the things are there, that's fantastic. But if someone takes out those bottom two pieces, a little bit of weight shift can cause the Jenga tower to fall. And that's kind of what we're doing. We're taking from our foundation and we're putting it up top. We rise higher. The Jenga tower is going longer. We feel like we're getting ahead, but we're sacrificing the foundation for something. It's kind of like sacrificing your needs for wants, It's like, would you really trade your home for like a one-day party at a yacht? I'd argue, and I think Maslow's hierarchy of needs would also argue that most people would not do that.
Yeah.
But that's what we've done as a society. And I think, it automatically, if we have a similar version of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it has to just give us a nice right hook to put us down and bring us back to our roots so we can fix that stability again. And it's really true, because I really feel that on a deep level. And with regards to you're mentioning that a baby chewing without growing teeth, the one thing that came to my brain is Kobe Bryant. And remember in peace, this man has done a lot of amazing things. But I remember particularly an interview where an individual was mentioning that he trains every single day, but he trains on like the basic things. And it's like, Kobe is undeniably one of the greatest of all time players.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you want to rank him in a certain order, that's probably up for debate. But I think everyone knows he is an all-time great. He is known for his mentality. He is known for his work ethic. He is known for his heart. And I think I use that as an example because if such an exceptional individual at an individual level works on the basics so much, why don't we emulate that as a societal level, where we do the complete opposite and focus on all these complex things where our foundations are weak, or at least we don't retrain them?
There's a point I wanted to go to, connecting to what you just mentioned about pressures.
Pressures.
Pressures. I did register that because now
I think it was the Jenga towers, huh?
No, you mentioned the young people are dealt with all these pressures. Yes, that we can reflect and all this stuff. But what if the pressures that we have don't allow us to recreate a new society or recreate new systems?
They're just
And
focused on
that's
getting
where
on
the
top.
pressure is coming from. It's almost like we answered and then came back. That's where the pressures are coming from. That we need to resolve these pressure points so that we can allow ourselves to sit still and reflect, because life can allow us to sit still. And that's life. That is life. That's the purpose of seasons.
Absolutely.
Right. But as a human society, we want to move so fast. And as I like the analogy you used of the Jenga, we are taking from our foundation and putting it up there.
I heard some pretty good ones today, huh?
That's a big one. I think you should use that. Jenga.
Should I copyright it? I'm not sure. Maybe I heard it from somewhere else too. Who knows?
But I mean, taking all this back to education, we see that now. It's almost like we discuss it and come back to
That's okay.
Education.
It's a conversation.
But it is education in the future has to look at all these things to look at what was our education then, what's the purpose of education to start with, how is it empowering people into moving into, if the education we need is to train on the basics, then let's make that clear. And I think that's exactly what the kind of education we need post-COVID is. Definitely. To train on the basics that maybe we still haven't mastered the potential that we want. And it's a big thing, Paham, that I want any young person to hear, that there's this potential that is put before us. Yet you can do this, you can be this, you're made for this. But if as young people we can sit still and hold in suspense those potentials. There's a book here written by, it's called Missing Out in Praise of the Unlived Life. It's by Adam Phillips. And the reason I'm bringing this, he says, the unexamined life is surely worth living, but it is the unlived life worth examining.
Say that again.
The unexamined life is surely worth living. The life that is not examined. culture. We just go on and on and on. But is the unlived life worth examining?
So it's kind of reflecting on the potential an individual has, and it's like whatever individuals have gone through, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
But it's for people like us who thankfully still have a couple of years left, knock on wood, that we have to reflect, we have to question ourselves, we have to question our reality, we have to question our systems, we got to question. And this isn't saying, go up to your police officer and say, why are you arresting me? Or like, why are you doing XYZ? They'll probably get you in trouble. So in my opinion, at least, try to be as polite as possible. And yeah, but that was kind of like a little aside. But point being is we need to question everything we're doing. We need to examine why we're doing certain things. There was what was the book called? Can't think of it from the top of my head, but the name of it, that is. But essentially it talks about the principle of putting in money to things that you value. Okay. And that's one way that you can save money, right? I believe. Yeah. So essentially, like, for example, for me, what that applied for me is I don't buy Starbucks coffee or any, I just use that as an example, Tim Hortons, whatever, because their coffee is like $2 to $3 each. I buy Nescafe, the instant coffee, $10 for like a 6-month supply for the amount that I use. And I use that money saved and use it for something that I actually value. Things like for my health, I like to work out. So I end up using that money for gym equipment. And similarly in society, that's the things that we should be doing. Similarly for individuals. And sure, you were going to say something.
No, I was going to emphasize the point you made in reflection of this to this question Adam Phillips asks, that is the unlived life worth examining? The life that maybe our parents have created for us, the life that our parents have created for us, not that it is there, but it's in images, it's in potential.
Oh, okay. I guess I kind of misinterpreted that. Cool.
No, you can't.
Did it?
But maybe recontextualize it is that
sure.
There's this image of potential that you've been painted from childhood, and maybe for a lot of young people, there's this image of a potential. You gotta build for a company at one time. You have to
make $1 billion.
But we live in this life of chasing that.
Yeah, that's it.
At the detriment of our present life, and we end up unexamining the life that we actually live in.
Yep.
So my encouragement to you and I and to a lot of people is that maybe we have to hold in suspense. Yes, potential is good. Yes, all these things that we want for ourselves are important. But have we mastered the basics of getting to the unlived life, the things that we want and all that? And that's where education comes in. And that's where the impact of the pandemic comes in, that it's weighing down on a lot of young people, that there's this potential of maybe some time owning a house, but the current mortgage prices are high.
High is high, man. You got to use a bigger word than that. Astronomical.
So there's this unlived life that is painted for a lot of young people. And I can tell you, maybe we are surviving this, but you can imagine the pressures that a lot of maybe teens are dealing with.
Sure.
Because
absolutely.
of Instagram and all these stuff that a lot of people are painting. And so a lot of people are living in the unlived life, chasing the potential, instead of actually focusing on mastering the basics of their current lives.
Absolutely. And it's kind of I was watching a video on the differences in culture between Canada and Germany. I think we were talking about this a couple weeks. Did I mention this on our previous episode? Maybe not.
Hmm.
Just cut me off if I did. But anyways, they were talking about the differences in the culture, and what they mentioned is they were from Canada, but they moved to Germany after, and they mentioned that people in Canada for the most part, they're millennials and stuff. They work, they rent an apartment, they get enough money to go to the suburbs, they raise a family, they get babies, and repeat. The cycle continues. And it's because it's costly, right? And it's like when you have to do this, you literally have your blinders on. Like this is the goal. This is the goal, but you're missing out on reflection. You're missing out on what your life could be. You're missing out on what you're sacrificing. And this is a critical point, Joseph. What you're sacrificing to get to this goal. And I'll give a personal example. So right now my goal is medicine, and this is something that I kind of reflected on after my friend kind of like we had a great discussion on it, and he kind of just right hooked me to that point of reflection, right? Because when you're in this zone, you can't see it yourself because there's your blinder, right? You haven't seen the sides of your world. So until someone gives you that right hook and smacks these blinders clean off, then you're like, wow, what do I want to do? Do I want to take the blue pill and pretend everything this is just a joke, or take the red pill and see life for what it is? And that was a Matrix reference. So hopefully I'm not too old if I mention that movie. We'll see. Man, time's flying. But what he mentioned that, do you realize how much you're giving up for this? Like, you're giving up your 20s. The 20s are the best years of your life. And, like, this is a competitive field that you're giving such amount of stress, anxiety, work, and you're losing not only that, but the potential that you could have to maybe start your own business, start your own firm, go up the corporate ladder, whether or not that's something that you want to do. And, it didn't really hit me until he mentioned this. And I think this goes for any aspect of life. And I just mentioned that example to say that it's happened to me as well, and this isn't to say that I don't want to go to medicine. I've reflected on it again, and I still do. But now I at least have this complete vision of what I am sacrificing to go forward and the risks that I've chosen to partake in. In the future, this may change, but I'm at least aware of it.
So the question becomes, is that whose potential am I chasing? It may be yours, but what is the real incentive? What's the real purpose behind that? Because if you're really chasing medicine for medicine's sake, then you'll get there. You'll get medicine. You get to be a doctor. But what happens after being a doctor?
Exactly.
Right.
You got to plan everything.
And so that's the pressure of potential.
Yeah.
Potential. And in this COVID period, definitely it's creating a lot of mental health issues, because a lot of people had these ideas, they had all these images and things that they wanted to do, things that they were hoping to achieve, school and all that. And the pandemic is humbling us, and it's telling us, hey,
man. That was like a golf club going for a swing at your dreams, hopes and dreams, and that just hit a hole in one. You know what I mean? Man, these analogies are great today, man. Dude, I'm loving this.
So maybe we need to get back to real education. Education of the soul and mind and the heart. And
the basics. Back to the basics. We talking about practice, man. We talking about practice.
Right. So, yeah, that's my reflection today. I think I feel for young people, and I feel for those of us who are now moving in, and I feel not even just for young people, but for
everyone. Everyone's going through
the generations before us. It's large, it's huge. But we have to examine, how did we get here, and how are we moving forward?
Absolutely. And I think we'll probably come to a quick close soon, but I think one aspect that we didn't mention is the individuals who are older than us, me and Joseph speaking of, they also have it hard. Technology wasn't something native to them that we grew up with. I mean, I think the majority of individuals our age, like you pick up a, computer or something, you play around with it for an hour, you figure it out. But for an individual who's older, it's like you can teach them 30 times, but it's just not something that they're natively comfortable with, and
Mhm.
I think that kind of still comes back to what needs to be changed at a societal level.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
But it's just another example to add to the pod. And I think me and Joseph were talking about individuals who are our age or maybe a little bit younger because we feel a little bit more connected to this age group. But it's not to say that we have the worst. There's everyone suffering in their own unique way, and I don't think we should ever discount from someone's pain and someone's turmoil, especially at the hands of something that I don't even remember that I can't even put words to it, man. This sucks.
Mhm.
But take the positives where you can, take the W's, appreciate your L's, and when I say L's, I mean losses. And, you know, whatever failure that arises in your life, I hope that this talk with Joseph has inspired an opportunity to reflect, to question, to speak, to communicate, and to focus on the fundamentals. And with that said, Joseph, is there anything you'd like to add for a closing statement, or should we thank you and go out to our outro?
Well, now it's always got some wisdom,
Let's go.
but yeah, I'll just say we got to take it easy. Take it easy on ourselves. Maybe we need to get back to the rhythm of the birds and the trees. We need to calm down um, from rocket science and to live and be like the rest of nature, because that's the only way we can bring back ourselves to the path heading to the cliff. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I just want to add one small note, even though I said I'll give you a final statement. It's interesting because I think in modern life, a lot of trends are moving towards going back to the basics, being one with nature, meditating, going back to more foods that we ate as our ancestors did rather than all of this processed food, all of these, heavy grains and all this kind of stuff. And it's a bit promising in my eyes. So, man, I think with all the reflection that's going on here, I am hopeful. And it's a difficult process and no one has any certainties because there's never any certainty with life, but I'm hopeful, hoping for the best. And I think through all this reflection and ability to realize what was going on for this whole time everyone was on autopilot, I think there's a huge benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So do you have any final thoughts on that, or?
I think I'm good, but yeah, I would say take it easy, and life still goes on.
It still goes on.
Life is happening whilst other things are happening. So
absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Joseph. So I'm not sure if we talked about this earlier with the guests, but what we're thinking of doing with Joseph is having Joseph on more regularly, where we can have these more casual chats about a particular topic. As you notice, these topics aren't super pinpointed as some of our other interviews, but I think that they're useful. At least I think so. Do you think so, Joseph?
I think so.
I hope so. Knock on wood. But I think this is what we're going to be doing, and hopefully we'll have a lot more philosophical thoughts coming on for a couple new episodes. But always let us know what you think. And with that said, thank you again to the listeners and viewers of this podcast, and we hope to catch you on the next one. And if you haven't already, please make sure to hit subscribe, like if you're on YouTube, leave us a review if you're on a podcasting platform, and most importantly, tell a friend, because if you're loving this content, chances are your network might too.
Mm-hmm.
And with that said, we'll catch you on the next one.
Luta continua. See you.
Hey everyone, I'm back after another amazing episode with another amazing guest. We hope we added value into your life so you could take the tips from this episode and fuel your process forward. If you enjoyed our episode today and think other friends or family members may also appreciate the lessons that our podcast brings, be sure to share us with them. Subscribe and rate our show so we know how we did. And always remember, trust the process.